Hey, this is Mariah with Just Like My Mama Quilt and Fabric Boutique located in our downtown Plant City, Florida area with a quick tutorial on how to convert sewing measurements into inches. I get asked this question a lot because most of us who do sew use a measuring tape or some sort of measuring ruler, and the measuring tools are in inches, not typical sewing measurements such as 1/4 of a yard. So hopefully this will help simplify sewing measurement conversion for you and make your sewing project a little less intimidating. The only supply you need is a calculator. So let's go ahead and get started with our first example. So with our first example, let's say we need 1/8 of a yard for our fabric pattern. So how do you convert 1/8 of a yard into inches? Essentially what we're doing is we're converting a fraction into a decimal. So we're going to divide the 1 into the 8, which will equal decimal 125 on our calculator. And then we're going to multiply decimal 125 by 36, which will equal 4.5 on our calculator. This means you need 4.5 inches for your fabric pattern. And just as a side note, so you know, or in case you may have forgotten, 36 inches equals a yard. So that is essentially why we are multiplying our decimal by 36. Now let's go ahead and move into our second example. So with our next example, let's say that your fabric pattern calls for multiple sewing measurements. So let's say you need 3/8 of a yard for your first fabric selection, 2 1/4 of a yard for your second fabric selection, and 1 1/8 of a yard for your final fabric selection. So how do you calculate multiple measurements into inches? So essentially what you're doing is you're going to convert each fragment, change it into a decimal, and then multiply it by 36. So let's go ahead and go through our sewing measurements. So we need 3/8 of a yard. So we'll take the 3 divided by the 8, which will equal decimal 375 on our calculator. Multiply that by 36, which will equal 13.5 on our calculator, which means you need 13.5 inches for that fabric selection. Our next sewing measurement is 1/4 of a yard, which we will take the 1 divided by the 4, which will equal decimal 25. We multiply the decimal 25 by 36, which will equal 9 on our calculator, which essentially means that you need 9 inches of that fabric. The next fabric selection is 1/8 of a yard. We take the 1 divided by the 8, which will equal decimal 125 as we saw in our first example. We multiply the decimal 125 by 36, which will equal 4.5 on our calculator, which means you need 4.5 inches for that fabric selection. So don't forget the 2 yards and the 1 yard your pattern calls for. So essentially for your fabric selection, you will need, for the first fabric selection, you will need 13.5 inches. For your second I'm like blah blah blah. For your second fabric selection, you will need 2 yards and 9 inches. And then for your final fabric selection, you will need 1 yard and 4.5 inches. I hope this quick tutorial helped you, so now you can sew until your heart's content. Like us on Facebook to be entered into our fabric bundle giveaway, and if you would like a breakdown of the most commonly used sewing measurements, get on over to Etsy by clicking the link below. Thank you for watching and help build our audience by subscribing to our channel. Have a fantastic day!